Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roche Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The transfer portal keeps on moving along in college basketball, and while the coaching carousel has been absolutely crazy, we just had John Calipari moving to the Arkansas Razorbacks to be their next head coach. Mark Pope is now the new Kentucky head coach, which has caused an uproar in Lexington. But the Auburn Tigers, they've been consistent. Bruce Pearl, he didn't take the Kentucky job. He's content to stay in the jungle. And now he's added the first transfer to the Auburn Tigers so far in this offseason with the announcement that the Furman transfer, JP Pegues, is going to be an Auburn Tiger next season. I'm going to go over how important JP Pegues could be for Auburn next season and whether this will help allow Auburn to continue to be one of the better teams in the SEC next season. Now, Auburn, like I said, has been very consistent the last few years. Yes, they've had a couple seasons where they weren't as good, but for the vast majority of the last 5 to 7 years, Auburn has been a top-tier SEC program, and that's because of Bruce Pearl. We know what he did at Tennessee. He had a lot of success there. Yes, he ended up getting fired for allegations, but now that he's been at Auburn, the rules have changed in college basketball with NIL in the portal, and I believe that helps a guy out like Bruce Pearl, who is very good in that regard. And Auburn, they've had success in the portal in the past, bringing in guys like Johnny Broome to the roster from Morehead State. That was a really good addition. Denver Jones was a big addition last offseason. A lot of these guys that are on his team were transfers in the past, and he usually brings in transfers from smaller schools. And that's where I think a guy like JP Pegues fits really well into the roster at Auburn, because if you look at what Alabama's even been doing with Nate Oates, most of the guys that Nate Oates brings in are from smaller schools. Aaron Estrada came from Hofstra. Mark Sears came from Ohio. And most of Auburn's players usually come from the mid-major level. You do not have to bring in guards from the Power 5 level for your team to be successful. You can, and it could work, but sometimes these smaller school players, they want to transfer up to a bigger school to show that they actually can play. And that's one of the things that the transfer portal has helped out the most, is guys that were never recruited out of high school by bigger schools. A guy like JP Pegues, he was barely a 3-star recruit. He was only like the 63rd ranked guard in his recruiting class, and Furman was one of the only schools that gave him a look. But now with the transfer portal, he can have success at a smaller school and then make his way up to a bigger school to possibly help out his NBA draft stock, which that's a whole other thing. I don't know if JP Pegues will be an NBA guy, but he's got some talent, and he never would have been able to showcase that at Auburn if the transfer portal did not exist in its current state. So that is one of the positive things about it. And Pegues said on his decision to choose Auburn, I chose Auburn because of their conviction and the vivid vision that they have for me. I also love how they operate in a family-oriented environment, which was a big priority for me. Lastly, Auburn is a winning program, which they are, and one of the best defenses in the country. So that's very good to see, and that should possibly help Auburn get some more transfer portal players, because they do need some more guys, because they are losing some guys on this past season squad. And also Joe Tipton tweeted it out, saying one of the top guards in the portal and JP Pegues has committed to Auburn, so it is official. But he averaged 18 points per game, 4 boards, and 5 assists this past season at Furman, and he chose Auburn over Florida, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. So there was some stiff competition to get him. So that's big for Auburn to be able to land him. And when he was at Furman in his first season, he only averaged 3 points per game. He averaged 12 points per game as a sophomore. And then as a junior, he averaged 18 points per game. By far had his best season. And as you can tell, he's a good free throw shooter, shooting at 87% at the line. He shot 36% from 3 this past season. So he is a fairly good three-point shooter. That should help out Auburn, who with Bruce Pearl at head coach has had several squads that were great at three-point shooting. This past year's team, though, even though they could chunk up a lot of threes, they weren't as good of a three-point shooting team as they have been around 3 or 4 years ago. So maybe JP Pegues can help out in that department. And he shot 42% from the field. He needs to be a little bit more efficient from the field, but he is a 6'1 guard, so that is a little bit excusable. And like I said, Auburn cannot be done in the portal because they are losing some key players from last year. Aden Holloway, Trey Donaldson, Katie Johnson, Jalen Williams, and Leor Berman are all gone from this past year's team. So that definitely leaves some roster spots available. Holloway, Donaldson, and Johnson all left in the portal, which is kind of tough because that's the issue when you are a team like Auburn, when you have so many guys that are playing on your squad and not all of them get a lot of minutes, especially with a guy like Trey Donaldson, who was kind of like the 10th man on the team. He just didn't get a lot of minutes, so he wants to go somewhere else where he's going to get more playing time. Katie Johnson was tough because he played a lot more. He was kind of a fan favorite. He always had some electric plays. Jalen Williams is out of eligibility. He was a solid player for Auburn this past season, so So obviously nothing Auburn can do in that department. But Auburn is bringing in a couple of freshmen who are fairly talented, so we'll have to see if they can factor into the rotation. But guys that look like they're going to be returning are Denver Jones, Chaney Johnson, Chad Baker-Mazara, and Chris Moore. Denver Jones and Chad Baker-Mazara were solid in the backcourt for Auburn this past season. I think JP Pegues can fit right in there. And then unknown to return are Johnny Broome and Dylan Cardwell. It would be big for Auburn to get Johnny Broome back. He's a guy that definitely could be on the NBA draft radar for the type season that he had. And when you are an older guy like Johnny Broome, and he's been in college for a while, sometimes it's best to go ahead and make the jump to the pros while you still can. But I do believe that the NBA is being more willing to wait on some of these juniors and seniors and knowing if they're really talented that they still can have a place in the NBA. Looking at a guy like Trace Jackson Davis in that regard. So maybe Johnny Broome can come back and improve even more with Auburn. He's gotten better at shooting threes, which could help him translate over to the NBA after next season, but we'll have to see there. But Auburn definitely needs to get a couple more players in the portal. Probably need to get another stretch four kind of to replace Jalen Williams because it's tough that they're losing him, and maybe get a couple more wing players. It looks like their backcourt's pretty good to go. Maybe they can bring in one more backup guard, but other than that, the backcourt's looking pretty solid, and I believe JP Pegues is one of the best additions that Auburn could have possibly made because he's from a smaller school. He's going to be eager to showcase that he can have a lot of success at a bigger school like a lot of these other guards that Auburn has brought in the past. He's one of the best players in the portal as well, which is big, and I believe that with his ability to shoot the three, and even though he is on the shorter side, he can drive in as well, and he sometimes plays bigger than he is, and he can pass the ball, so he's a pretty good floor general as well. I think the Auburn Tigers got a great addition. It's also for the Tigers that Bruce Pearl is staying, and even though Auburn is losing some of their key contributors from last season, I believe if the Tigers bring in a couple more solid transfer portal additions to pair with the guys that they're bringing in their freshman class and the guys that are returning from this past year's team, which is the perfect mix to have, I believe that the Auburn Tigers should end up being one of the best teams in the SEC next season. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about the Auburn Tigers bringing in JP Pegues for next season's squad, and whether you think it is a fantastic addition and how much you think he will be able to help out the Auburn Tigers next season, and how good of a job you think Bruce Pearl has done in the transfer portal the last few seasons for Auburn. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.